I don't get the Wi-Fi. I was like, I don't remember these characters' names. Not
I
that it
also
matters
don't
that
get
much.
Wi-Fi.
Or
like,
not,
what
or
is
rather,
it?
I don't get Wi-Fi. Like,
The Wi-Fi
what is
here?
that? I don't.
Is
or
it
I don't.
like
I'm not getting my cellular
a balloon?
service.
I feel
Oh.
like it's a balloon.
A Wi-Fi?
Yeah, a Wi-Fi.
Why for why?
Why?
Why is it up there? That balloon.
And also,
And then Fi, like Fi, get out of here.
yeah, like
you
I
guys
don't
know
have
that.
enough Wi-Fi. Fi.
Fi. Okay, can I go on your Wi-Fi? I probably don't need it, but
Then no. No, yeah. you
then
can.
no, it's limited. Okay.
Give him.
Is there anything I need
deets.
to know? Also,
Is there anything to know? Not really. We like
No.
to
Oh, I can do it for you if you'd
Yeah.
rather.
give me,
Give
me
Wi-Fi.
No, we usually we just kind of wing it. However, like your speed, like if you want to, you gear the conversation in terms of
Oh yeah, there's no format.
Yeah, that's
how
what-
you want to
that's what I
talk
thought.
about it. If you want to talk about scenes, if you want to talk broad strokes first, whatever you want to do. Do you have charms?
Are you on the Wi-Fi?
Yep, I'm on the Wi-Fi. I'm just remembering.
I don't think I've ever seen you eat charms.
I eat charms all the goddamn
charms?
time.
No, you don't.
What are
Yes, I
charms?
do.
No, you don't.
I have a crate of 150 of
For
these
how
in my
long?
room.
How long have you been doing this?
A couple months. I just got into it.
It's not like a
What are they?
couple months.
Charms.
What is that?
Charms is the original candy that spun off all other hard candies. Like,
Oh, that's
these-
Lifesaver.
well, they existed
original?
in like the Wild West days. They sold Charms.
No.
And that company eventually came out with the Tootsie Roll, the Blow Pop, Lifesaver.
I want you to
Char-
know
oh, okay.
that he's
like
feeding
say
you
from Charms.
Is this
candy propaganda right now.
Candy
is this
Ganda.
Candy Ganda?
It's candy.
Is this Candy Ganda?
Yeah.
Guys, I
It's
almost
just another game
I
of
almost
Candy Ganda.
I almost chose Wreck-It Ralph, but I didn't.
Ooh, that would have been a good one too. I
Like,
like that one.
I,
I like this.
I chose
movie.
not to because I was just gonna be talking shit on Wreck-It Ralph the whole time, and I was like, you know what?
specifically on Ralph or on the
No, the
like,
movie.
the whole
I
movie.
hated it.
The thing about
You hated Wreck-It Ralph?
I thought it was I hated it.
You hated it. All right.
Hated it.
No,
To
we,
see if we're
no,
gonna
we
fight.
can't go into it.
Do you like Lego Movie?
Love Lego Movie.
We are incompatible.
But that's not this episode. It's not going to come up.
why are we talking about? So
No.
Well,
I haven't
mean,
seen
this will be
Daniel.
in the episode because
I haven't
I'm
seen
rolling,
Daniel in a
but-
long time. I
Oh,
was just-
we're rolling.
Yeah, the
yeah,
episode's
he does
begun.
that. He does that.
Oh, has it been going since the beginning?
yeah,
bit.
probably.
Okay. Just
I
don't, just
mean,
don't put anything where I'm talking shit about that.
I
Company.
woke up the
About
other day
Wreck-It
and had a
Ralph?
recording of myself waking
No,
up.
that-
But today's topic is not Wreck-It Ralph. We're back for another Frame Rate, the show where we rate frames
Whee!
and convert them from eyeball fodder into earball fodder
Yeah.
and shove them at you.
Are your ear balls ready?
My ears are just ready for it. I just can't wait.
We're your trio of voices this week. I'm Michael Swain.
I'm Abe Epperson, and with us is our guest.
Daniel Vincent Gordh. Freshly primed earballs for you guys.
Excellent.
I can't wait.
You flush them out with the ear neti pot, as I ask all our guests to do.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But just so you know, by the end of this, they're going to be ruined.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be bad for everyone.
So the topic this week is a movie I've never seen, and in fact, I
Wow.
had never seen any of the movies from the era of Tom Hanks before he became Forrest Gump, Saving Private Ryan.
Hot
like
damn.
important.
Big?
Like I haven't seen Big, I haven't seen Splash, I haven't seen Money Pit.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Joe versus a Volcano.
I haven't seen almost any of. I've seen Big.
So there was this period where Tom Hanks was gonna be what, like a Dax Shepard or a Ben Stiller before he graduated to being male
It was
Meryl
a simpler
Streep.
time.
Yeah.
They didn't have those niche shepherds. You know, like this was more leading man. He was
Yeah.
going to be a wasp, which is a term I'm going to use a lot this episode, considering that it's
He'll
about the Burbs.
sting ya, but only in,
He'll sting ya.
But only in up to a point. He was in comedic vehicles only.
Yes.
And the one I conspicuously didn't mention was picked by our guest Daniel. Please name our topic and explain why you picked it.
Okay, so we are talking about The Burbs. The Burbs, you guys. I chose because, well, these gentlemen gave me this nice list, and I was looking at all the movies. The reason we were talking about Wreck-It Ralph is because I almost talked about Wreck-It Ralph today, but I have a lot of latent anger about Wreck-It Ralph that I just didn't want to air out in front of you guys.
We'll
so I
have
was
to have you back.
So I was looking through all the movies, and I saw The Burbs, and I was like, I know intimately what the cover of that movie looks like. Like I
so
remember
funny.
seeing it in
Is it
in
him in the
Blockbuster
robe with lightning striking
Yeah,
and
and
his
he's-
robes fluttering open?
exactly
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the like dark street.
Yes.
And I just knew what that was
It is
and
an
had
indelible
no
image.
clue what that movie was about at all.
Same.
So
No
you
idea.
hadn't seen this movie.
No.
And you hadn't seen this movie.
And that poster was, you're right. That's for some
Right.
reason it's a memorable image. I did know it's about a cul-de-sac where they end up thinking something horror is going on. That's all I knew.
This
Yeah.
is gonna be fun. I want to hear your guys' takes.
It was.
You've seen it.
This.
Oh, we've all
No.
watched it.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
we've all
But-
watched it now, but
Yeah.
like this was like important to me growing up. Like me and my
Oh.
brothers would yell at, "Hey, what are you doing, Pinocchio?" and stuff like that. We had like lines. Like it was like
I don't remember what.
Oh, you
our
like said you actually.
references.
The reason, by the way, I said you've seen it, right? To Michael, because he was like, I've never seen this movie in a way that seemed like it was in the present tense, and I, for a moment, was like, am I about to be like? Is Michael revealing that this is the one movie that hasn't seen that he's reviewing?
Full
Yeah.
disclosure, we
Just jumping right in.
rescheduled this session twice, and I still never found time to watch the movie. This is like a book club where I'm gonna fake my way through based on the cover.
he would just play the video and then start
Yeah.
vomiting as soon as the
No, but
Burbs
really,
come up.
I don't want to get off this too
Okay,
fast. Let's
yeah.
stick on this cover because that's what I'm most
Yeah.
familiar with.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah, yeah.
really unpack.
I
the
feel like he's
cover
holding
for
a
about an hour.
wire or something.
I thought
Anyway,
there
you
was
guys can probably
there's
visualize
a weather
it.
vein involved.
Yeah, it's a dark and dreary landscape
Right.
in the suburbs, and so I was like, you know what? I want to actually know what this movie's about for the first time. Here's my general lay of the land point of view,
Lay it on us.
which is that it's so like Fright Night. Or like a Rear Window-y kind of thing,
Yeah.
but like Fright Night specifically,
Those are two perfect films. This is the amalgam of those two things, you know.
But Fright Night had come out before this movie.
This
So
came
then
out 89. Fright Night was
I looked it up earlier. I'm pretty sure it was 85.
85.
Okay.
So it's like a Fright Night, but without going to exciting places.
Now, Fright Night I haven't seen. I'm not going to pretend I have, and that gives me credibility about having seen the
Burbs.
Burbs. But what is Fright Night in a nutshell?
Fright Night, in a nutshell, is
Vampire movie.
Younger, like a teen boy, like starts to suspect his neighbor of being a vampire,
Okay.
and very similar events take place.
Right, right.
In that,
It's
except
a very classic, like neighbors up to something story.
Neighbors up to
Yeah.
no good.
Now
And
in
this is
that
an
one, it's a
interesting
horror
subgenre.
movie,
Which
and
is
he,
a
like,
whole
turns his
subgenre,
friend, and like there's a whole it's pretty dark.
Oh, like a dark horror movie, whereas
Yeah.
this is a comedy horror.
this
all
is
the
like
way.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but like
But the
But we're
bits
in a
are,
cul-de-sac.
There's
Yeah.
a ghost or a wind blows. Yeah.
woo, or there's green lights where there shouldn't be.
yes,
I thought outside of Tom Hanks, who it is delightful to see, like there was a reason, like it made me want him to see Tom Hanks be in Anchorman 3 or something. Where
Oh,
I was
yeah,
like, every
yeah.
time he was on screen, he really lit up the screen, and I get why. He's like earning. This is why later he'll be Tom Hanks.
Right.
But like,
The
pretty
Hank.
bad movie, right? Like pretty fucking corny, stupid movie.
The Burbs.
I'm not looking at Abe because it's a childhood favorite, so I'm asking for backup. Dave.
Yeah.
So so there's some things that I really like about it, because one of my favorite movies is Gremlins,
Okay.
and
That's Joe Dante.
Also
as
Joe
well.
Dante.
the same
Director, yeah.
And it has a lot of the Gremlins stuff that I think is really effective. It's very like whimsical. It's got the Jerry
Yeah.
Goldsmith music. It's very like bouncy, and you're like, da, 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 and you feel like you're in
Everything's
this
bright. There's no
Yeah.
dark frames. You know?
I would describe it as horror that's not scary, coupled with comedy that's not funny.
That's fairly accurate.
Do you like Caddyshack?
No.
All right. Well,
Other than like bowing down, being like, yeah, Bill Murray is doing a performance that's way ahead of its time. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't make the script of the movie less like dated and hacky to me.
Yeah, there was some tone stuff that was weird about it. Like I was I started watching it near Halloween.
Burbs now, not Caddyshack.
The
Right,
Burbs.
good.
And I was like kind of delighted because I didn't realize that it was a horror-ish movie. And so at the beginning I was like, ooh, I'm like really excited about this. Like what's going to happen? And then, pretty quickly Carrie Fisher's like, oh, we need to go on that vacation. You know, I want to like get out of town.
Yeah.
And he's like, I just want to stay in town for a week and just relax. And I was like, this is a good setup. She's about to go out of town, leaves him at home to fend for himself for the week, and
Yeah.
he goes
Hangover
off. He
4.
goes off the radar, or you know, he goes off the reservation and starts
Yeah.
loses his mind a little bit.
Although, to be fair,
but she never went out of town.
That's
she
true.
stayed in town.
Well, just for a brief time.
Towards the end, she takes the kids for like 12 hours.
It's at the very end of the movie, though. So you're like, I'm like, ooh, this is the setup. Oh, wait, it's not the setup. She's just at home, too. And she's like, he's pretty like mean to her.
That's what I
and
was
she
gonna
doesn't
say.
really care.
I gotta add, because it is a thing that I don't judge the filmmakers or the humans living at that time. But in the same way where there's a generational gap where some people are still fine with spanking their kids, I'm sure.
Right.
But more of a majority of people are like, oh, you spank your kids? That's a little weird. I loved how honest the parents fighting in front of their kids was. Because he was like, no, I kind of want to stay. No, he was like, I should get to stay in my house if I want. Get out of here. Just shut up. Like
she was like, okay, well,
the fighting
whatever
in front
you
of the kid
do
is pretty real. And I was like, that is how my parents fought in the 80s. But comedies these days would have sanitized that more. So in a way, I guess it's more real. But it was jarring to me in a comedy to see non-sanitized fight. Like, the guy just wants to smoke a goddamn cigar. Can't you just go cook the roast?
Right.
And his son is like watching this unfold. And it's not addressed as like a traumatizing event.
No, not at all.
It's addressed as, this is a scene where we establish that the parents disagree. It's just that it actually made me realize that our broad comedies today that involve like straight white parents are pretty sanitized. Their fighting is like, okay, well, mommy and daddy are just having a conversation.
Yeah.
But we don't want it to impact you. This was like good 80s fighting. I liked that.
It just felt like Carrie. So there was definitely a few kind of weird things about it in that kind of like, oh, a good amount of time has passed since this came out.
Yes.
Like, oh, the women in it are very hollow. Not that we have fixed that yet, but you know, truly like it's so from the male perspective, and the women have no perspective. Carrie Fisher is like the ultimate.
But that really hasn't. I mean,
housewife with no. You know, at least I feel like for some reason this movie didn't know that it needed to have a story between the main character and his wife.
Yeah. Additionally, Mark, who's played by Bruce Dern, he's the vet who's like into guns kind of guy.
Yeah.
Never explicitly
his
told he's a
wife
vet.
is essentially an object.
Yeah.
Who that like Corey Feldman looks at, they all look at.
Which is a bit in Friday as well.
Right.
So again, to hammer home, like, it's not like if you fast forward, it's gotten much better. Like, Adam Ganzer and I just watched Tag, the very recent comedy with Ed Helms playing
that
Tag.
was not
Jeremy
of
Renner.
interest to me.
Well, we watched it with an analytical eye for reasons, but one of the main takeaways that I thought was so interesting is that it's 2018. We're watching this movie, and there's like 4 female characters that are literally can be cleanly slotted into the Madonna or horror categories, which is like a meme from the 1400s of how we view women. It was just insane to me that still you're like, yeah, she's the wicked woman that plays them against each other using lust. She's the perfect, capable woman who's an angel who's going to be a sex prize at the end.
Right.
And she's the woman who will never speak because she's just along to watch these events unfold.
Have you guys seen Hot Tub Time Machine recently?
Not since it was new. Not since it was new.
It's
I liked
spicy.
it. It's spicy.
It's like a 10-year-old film that is stuck in the early 90s. It is so crazy to see these people say shit that you're like, whoa!
But Crispin Glover with the one arm's still funny. I hope.
Yeah, it's
All right.
not bad. That one's a pretty easy bit. Yeah.
Back to the Burbs. but no one can nail creepy, awkward like Crispin Glover. But he's not in this. We have the other notable castmates are, well, let's describe the neighborhood because it basically boils down to the trio of dudes plus Corey Feldman watching them.
Right, and the closeted gay neighbor who just has his dog.
Oh, who?
Walter.
Walter.
Yeah,
I mean, who
Who's
who
a
knows?
MacGuffin?
But
Yeah.
For a second, I
that's
thought
clearly
you were
what they
saying,
were.
What's the name of the guy who they constantly refer to as fat, who by our standards is like is mildly overweight? He's the fat one.
Art?
Yeah, the comic relief neighbor.
Oh yeah.
His introduction is how much he eats.
Is it? I didn't even remember that.
Oh, his intro. Is
He's just
he
putting
steals
food on
breakfast. He
everything.
goes to the
Yeah.
fridge in
Right,
his neighbor's
yeah.
house
Right,
and
right,
takes a
right.
roast.
Yeah.
Everyone refers to him as the fat one, and they make classic like comedy fat jokes at his expense, which is just so funny to me because again, it's like an era thing. They would have cast a way fatter dude in that role.
They had John Candy slated, and they just didn't rewrite
That
it
actor
when
would not
they
have made
recast
it.
it.
So it's the dumb fat one, Tom Hanks, who's the identity dad,
Yeah.
and the crazy vet. Do they explicitly say he's a vet, or does he just?
He
have a
says
bunch
he
of
spent
military equipment?
18 months in the bush. So the four main
Yeah.
characters' names. Also, did you guys notice their definitions of the personalities that they exhibit? So Art is very creative with his version of reality. He's like, maybe it's this, this Slavic family moves in. Maybe they're, up to something. Maybe they're murdering people. Mark is a vet, obviously, and a gun nut. That's Ray is Tom Hanks. He obviously propels the story forward and has like the singular once after Act 2 into Act 3 once he decides whole hog and like they go and they have the sardines and crackers, that scene.
Right.
He comes back and he's like, I've found the toupee. These guys are murderers, clearly. And then also one could argue Carol, who is Carrie Fisher, could
It's
also
very
just
Christmassy.
She's very she wants everyone to be happy and
Well, also Mark's last name is Rumsfeld, which I don't know if he was on the political stage yet at the time, but obviously could be a Donald
I don't think
Rumsfeld
enough for a movie
To
in
reference him.
1989 that
Yeah.
would notice that.
Ooh,
yeah.
he's been around though. He's been in the administration.
But yeah, then there's Walter, and then the Klopeks have Ruben, the doctor, Hans.
These are the neighbors that are creepy.
And that's the reference I made before at the very end after the ambulance stuff. At the very end, Hans crashes the car and tries to run, and Mark goes like, "Hey Pinocchio, where are you going?" Which is just random ad lib. It's just very
I
silly.
think it's meant to be a racial epithet in the sense that he's Italian, so he's calling him Pinocchio.
No, I think it's
No?
because what he's wearing is they're not Italian. They're
I
like,
know. I think he's conflating all European people.
Maybe I think it's because he's wearing a very like short jacket
Little frock
and
coat.
like a straw hat, and like he just looks like a cartoon character. But I don't know. There could be an origin of a racist epithet in there. I wouldn't know.
Well, I'm building to my main point, which is this is basically a movie about. At first, my prediction watching it when the kid came out on the porch, I was like, oh, this is about a meth house, finding out there's a meth house in it. I mean, he's picking at sores on his faces and he has yellow skin and the light hurts him. And I was like, this is just going to be a poor family falling apart because of their son is addicted to meth.
Amazing
and
movie,
all the
though.
wasps invade their home.
It's
and
just
privacy.
Gummo.
Yeah.
No, this was not Gummo at all.
Not Gummo.
Then when it turns out, no, they're creepy because they're Slavic is basically the real reason.
They have a classic horror movie house on a
Yes.
suburban perfect cul-de-sac.
But I would tell listeners that is not enough reason to wait until it's dark, break into your neighbor's house, go through their garbage, literally threaten them. Like Mark says to their faces before they have any evidence, shit like, I'm going to get you. I know what you did. Don't do this to your neighbors. And like, this is basically the story well before they have proof of xenophobic white dads getting together to harass and break into the home of people because they are of a different national origin. That's the main underlying thing that makes them weirded out about them.
I would say
that's
that
what the movie's about.
I mean, I think
because they are the villains.
To be
right?
fair, I mean, I think there's some truth.
That's the argument. But finish, Daniel.
Which is, I think I was reading a little bit on like, what they were thinking making this, and Wikipedia'd it. And I think people who spent time in the white suburbs growing up relate to like, there's one creepy house on the street that like no one ever comes out of, and like what's going on in there. And
but why does it have to be, I bet they're not from round here? That's always the conclusion.
Exactly.
Well, they weren't from around here.
1980s suburb life.
They were from Transylvania.
Yeah, it's essentially a New Yorker cartoon about like xenophobic otherness and WASP culture reacting to other types of cultures infiltrating, quote unquote.
Although it's not like
suburb.
these.
That's absolutely what's.
Although this is not. It's not totally, because these people are not. These people are not bringing a new culture into the street, because it's not like they're decorating their house the way like they would where they're from. They move into what is the spooky murder house,
right?
And so it's not really their culture they're bringing in. Yeah. But there is an otherness to them just being from somewhere else that is just like ambiguously spooky to them.
It's said 10 times. I'm pretty sure they're Slavic, like with deep fraught meaning. Yeah. And I'll get off this point, but I would just say I don't agree that it's an effective satire. That it would be if it ended where I really wanted it to end, which is a good
flip,
is
that the doctor isn't actually a murder doctor.
He's just a guy who happens to be creepy and works as a crematory artist. And Tom Hanks yells in the street, which I thought was a cool thing. Don't you see?
It's us.
Our whole thing we posited was that living in the mundane suburbs drives people crazy. It's us. We're the neighbors from hell. Yeah. We went crazy. Then immediately the guy goes, "No, you were right. I am a creepy murderer."
We're the ones who are vaulting over fences and peeking through people's windows. Yeah. We're the ones throwing garbage in the street and lighting fires. By the way, which is Carol says, like, what are you gonna? You're just gonna throw garbage in the street and light people's houses on fire? So she, like, at the beginning of the film knew that that's what they were gonna do somehow. We're the ones who are acting suspicious and paranoid. Art, we're the lunatics. Us. It's not them. It's us. Which is like it's that barbaric yelp of that. I agree with you that it isn't a great satire, and my argument for that, because this is exactly what I want to talk about. My argument for that is because, especially even now, like with Marvel movies, but definitely true with hindsight in 1989, you get someone who's like Tom Hanks, who's like on the up and up, about to get an Academy Award nomination kind of stuff. Like he's becoming an A-lister, and he's not going to be the hero in this movie in this climate. You just can't make that movie.
I agree. I think Joe Dante probably knew it was happening, but it was a sellout move of like, the studio is going to want to have
it. It has to. But Joe Dante wanted, like, I'm pretty sure the best part of the movie is the speech that you're referencing.
And that's probably because that's the idea he had that he built the movie
That's
around.
what it's about.
It's just when you make a compromise like that, if that's truly what happened, where... Because if you haven't seen the movie, we already spoiled it. But at the end, basically, no evidence comes up that they are actually creepy, and
you think,
Tom Hanks is like, "Oh my God, we just lost our minds and we turned against them. Look what monsters we become." Yeah. And then moments later, the guy's like, "It was me. I am going to kill you now, and you'll never find my secret."
Yeah.
And so then ultimately they undercut what seems to be the theme by being like, "Oh no, you guys were right. Good job." And then. Ultimately, if you do that, the movie isn't about anything because the theme was undercut immediately.
It's just a comedy.
And then, but I mean, if I had read the script, when in the version I saw, I would have been like, "This is a really fun kind of idea. Cool, go further with it." I think more stuff needs to happen, and it should
by
the
end
of it. There should be some sort of journey. Some of the characters should either not be in it or should have qualities. Like the Carrie Fisher, character drove me crazy.
But,
Now, Lee.
No, you're absolutely right about that. I think that this is it's a pandemic that still exists. Like I think that you would be. If you don't think that this kind of shit is still happening now,
I just don't watch
making movies, you're disillusioned.
If you turn the script in now with all the improvements you just described, I think a healthy number of producers would still say, you can't promise a movie about murderer neighbors and then they'd turn out to not be murderers.
And I agree.
So change the ending. I don't
Right.
care if it goes against what
They
you're trying
look
to do.
creepy, therefore are creepy.
Although I think if there hadn't been a murderer, if they hadn't been right at the end, I would have really disliked this movie. I
Or
would have been
what
like,
if-
so they're supposed to like descend into madness, and we stay in a couple houses the whole time, and I'm supposed to have gone on this journey for 2 hours with you where basically nothing happens.
Well, they
like,
do-
I can't.
They blow up a
I don't
house.
have time. They blow up a house, but that's
Pacing
it.
has also changed so much in the interim with
Yep.
comedy
Yeah.
that I would say the amount of comedic bits that, like sequences that escalate and then resolve in this, would be in a sitcom episode today.
Yeah.
Like there would be an episode of
Yes.
Everybody Loves Raymond where they get suspicious and then there's a commercial break and then in Act 2 they burn their house down and in Act 3 they are talking to the police and that's the cold close. This is
Yeah.
kind of stretched out that same bit where you're like, oh, you thought they were evil, but it was just a misunderstanding.
Right.
There's a
Right, exactly.
There's actually a really interesting like I don't know, I guess it's chapter Edgar Wright wrote about how this movie influenced him as a filmmaker because it's the first. That is always true. Like you're absolutely right. It's slow and it feels like it's formulating an idea. But the thing is, the idea is a great idea because name another film that predates this that
Right.
does this kind of stuff. It absolutely is seminal in the like. For no reason, for absolutely no reason. Tonally, it makes no sense. Movies up to this point would never do this, and I'm talking like Mel Brooks comedies even.
Well, I'm just gonna so shortly because I want to see if we have same brain. Are you about to talk about the lawn bit?
The lawn?
Stepping on and off the lawn?
Yeah, with like the spaghetti
knew it.
western,
Yeah,
spaghetti
okay,
western,
continue.
like dollies into their faces and stuff like that. Why make it a western like that? You have to transplant yourself into 1987 and go like someone who's taking like here's like I don't know what it actually was made for, but like here's like $40 million.
Right.
Go make a movie that is going to be on every theater in the United States.
Right.
And then they're like, why is it a spaghetti western all of a sudden?
In this moment.
Why is
Yeah.
it like this Michael Bay like type thing? Even though Michael Bay hadn't even done it yet, Michael Bay does it later, like where it has these swooping shots for no
Yeah.
reason to play for comedy. It doesn't feel right because no one had seen it before.
And of course, I think what a lot of people will grant is the funniest moment in the movie is an incredibly jarring formal break that today would totally play in something like Deadpool 2 or whatever. But back then must have been very jarring where they go, this bone
Oh,
is
yeah.
Walter.
I know.
And it just pumps, zooms in and
I
out.
know.
I scream.
I didn't like that.
I did think that was
I didn't like that.
funny.
It's that whimsy though. It has no teeth.
well,
It's
here's
saying,
the thing.
well, this is a cartoon universe.
Right.
But I just want to ask Abe before we get off that thread, would you say Marx Brothers counts as that? Because they would do stuff like everyone freezes in place, the lights go dark, and Groucho turns to camera and says, and now a bizarre interlude. And to me, that's that's fucking ahead of its time,
I
dude.
absolutely agree. I think that the Marx Brothers is to plays and theater what this was to film. In other words, taking the sutures of how everything that became before it was crafted, unraveling them, looking inside and going like, oh, these are the mechanizations of editing. These are the mechanizations of sound.
But you're right, they
And
have
then
no
how
editing
can we
jokes,
just
yeah.
like dice it up and make something that's super familiar to someone and then as a joke just throw it
There's
against the wall.
moments that are jarring, but they recognize what it's from. They go, oh, I've never seen a comedy suddenly become a Western, but I know that these are Western shots.
I'm
now.
not saying that you wouldn't have something like The Simpsons without the Burbs. I'm just saying that the Burbs was at the beginning of this movement.
Yeah.
I mean, filmmaking wise, I appreciated a lot of things about it. Although I still have to say, see Fright Night, because this is just a boring, not as good version of Fright Night without as many movements in the
Is
script.
Fright Night comedic at all, though? It's a straight horror?
and
Oh, it
Fright
is?
Night's been remade since then, and it's really
Charlie's so the main character in Fright Night is such a dick in that movie. Like his girlfriend, his super hot girlfriend that he does not deserve, and the movie acknowledges
That's
this
kind of
fact.
kind of the
is
80s for you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's now.
Yeah, that's actually
It's
just that's
constantly male
humankind.
fulfillment,
That's
yeah. he's just like looking out the window, like watching a guy. She's just like, I want to have sex. What the fuck is happening right now? He's like, shh, my neighbor is walking around.
Right.
Well, you're talking about Corey Feldman now, right?
No, sorry, we're talking about Fright.
That's hilarious because Corey Feldman has this beautiful, sensitive,
boy.
Right.
like just attached to you whenever you need her to be, and then gone whenever, like literally, you know, a holographic fantasy girlfriend.
Right.
And he does
In the Burbs?
same shit. She
Yeah.
comes over and sits on his couch and is like, I just came over to see you. And he's like, let's sit on the porch in folding chairs and watch my 30-something-year-old neighbors do stuff. Do
Right.
the cul-de-sac.
It was like
I'm
that
ordering
she's
She's
pizza.
like- and she's like, I don't want to
He-
do that. And he's like, shh, you'll get it. Just give it some time.
Did you
And
know
you're like,
that,
No, make sweet love to her in the afternoon.
By the way, Corey Feldman improv'd the line "pizza dude" in this.
God.
And he is widely accredited as the origin of the.
Well,
this movie is the origin.
I
of
do
that
appreciate that because I like
Yeah.
I like
What
that I can be like, hey, pizza dude, which I say
an
every time I
expression?
order a
Yeah,
pizza.
like Teenage Mutant Ninja
hey,
Turtles.
pizza dude, pizza dude.
Yeah.
I-
It's
Oh,
like,
dude.
I mean, it doesn't feel like an expression.
It just feels like
It feels
two
like
words
it's like
together.
saying something like, "Why'd you call him a nerd?"
Hey, ninja pipe. Like,
Yeah, like what's you made up the word nerd? You know, like-
exactly.
The
Feldman is I think because they probably wanted younger kids to also go see it and think there was a rad teen that's them in the
Right.
movie.
yeah.
Feldman seems to. And I actually like Feldman. He doesn't suck as an actor.
No, he's
charming.
he's engaging.
He
You're
is.
watching
He is.
him. You're like,
Yeah,
okay.
but
There's
he
a
did-
reason he was in so many movies.
I'm interested to ask you guys because I was 5 in '89. And so I have some memories. And of course, 90, 91, 92. You know how time works.
yeah,
You were also 5.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
But
I'm great with time.
I feel like Feldman was there to be this Greek chorus that kept reminding us of what's really cool when you think about it is how it's this a neighborhood's just a random assortment of people there for different reasons, but yet they form these meaningful connections. Like he goes, I love this neighborhood. And literally the last shot of the movie is him looking
Direct
into
to camera,
camera,
which
I
is
fucking
so-
love this street.
Oh yeah.
So fucking over the
And
top.
my question is, I want to hear from listeners too. Was anyone's neighborhood like that? My parents didn't know the names of anyone who lived and we lived in a nice suburban neighborhood that looked exactly like that. They still didn't know the names of the people to the left and
Yeah,
right.
mine was.
Yeah,
Yours was
we
like
knew
that?
everyone on our block.
Interesting.
When I
I mean,
lived
it
in
was-
Inglewood, which I lived in half of my childhood was in Inglewood. Everyone knew each other's names, but that was because Inglewood
was
is
more
much
of a
more
turf thing,
No,
right?
no, Inglewood has been it's been a variety of. It's changed a lot during my life,
Yeah.
but it was just much more of a community. Like people know their neighbors, people need their neighbors for things. In
Right.
Marin, which was very opposite, much less so.
Oh,
People
Marin.
knew each other, but they didn't need each other. They
Anything from
had
each
This is
their,
more
you
about
know,
Marin.
This is more about Marin,
Yeah.
certainly.
Man, I feel like I've missed out on a huge part of life then. Like
You're
I
good.
happened
You're
to
good.
grow up in
You're good.
sterile environments.
you're fine.
I never had a kid who was a friend who was a neighbor. I would always travel by car to their house, which was across town.
We would walk
Who
to
would
each
you
other's
kick rocks
houses.
with?
Because we were friends
would,
from
Who would you-
school.
we would
Catch
knock on the
frogs
door
with.
and say, like, can Sonia come out and play?
Yeah.
And we would literally ask if they could come out and play. And
thought
their
all
parents
that
would
shit
be
was
like,
made up.
yeah, she can come out and play. And she'd be like, yes.
Yeah.
And run out.
I
and
grew
then
up
suddenly
on
we were
like
playing.
kind of farmland though, so I still had to walk, but like it was the old country living, so it's like, yeah, you let your 8-year-old child just walk for a mile like no one's even around. so
Sonia's
it'll be
mom,
fine.
when
Well,
she
they're
needed
safe
her,
if no
would go
one's around.
outside and whistle really loud, and they would be like, "Oh, we have to go home."
Right,
Mom's
right.
whistling so loud.
But
So from my perspective,
So,
you guys' childhoods are like fucking
leave
but
it
here's-
to be.
Norman
leave it to
Rockwell
Beaver.
paintings. Yeah.
it's you know what, but this movie has a very specific point, I think, about like the Marin counties of the world, which is that it's public theater. Like people looking outside the window because they're bored because of the formation economically what we had during this era, or what this era is speaking about, the grabbing on and hold of America's middle class,
Yeah.
and the exodus of the suburbs that really happened in like the 50s and 60s. But now it's like the children of the people who like founded that concept were now like inheriting that life. right? So that's what the 80s is. And it's just so grotesque. There's actually a film called Fists in the Pocket from 1950s that is an Italian film. And it's a really good movie. And it also is all about like people, like everyone knows everything about everyone, right? And it's like if you were to break up with your girlfriend, the second you do it, everyone knows and is on a side and has an opinion on it. And you're so close to being ostracized from the only area of living that you have. And I think that's the same thing that it's talking about here, is that it's like we are toxic. This is a toxic environment because you're bored, you're kind of rich, and you have just time to kill, and you don't like the other people.
I think it tries to do that.
Nor has anyone in my family ever been bored enough to give a shit what our neighbors are doing or going through.
But it's trying to be
is fascinating.
It's trying to be a smaller story though than that, in that it's, you know, like that is interesting, and there's something very like beautifully Americana about this that captures a very American phenomenon, and that I appreciate about it. But ultimately, it leaves out women entirely from that element, from exploring that. It's really just about this dude who's Tom Hanks plays, who's like. Who, frankly, to me, plays a character that doesn't make any sense.
I love
He's just generally like mad all the time.
Yeah, he's just
the setup
for no reason. He's like average Joe.
He's
like
an average piece
come
of
on.
shit. He's an average
Carrie
piece of
Fisher's character has literally no qualities. I don't know how else to
Other
say
than
it except
nice.
for that she's literally just like, well, whatever you want to do. Well, I just want you to try this a little more. Okay, well, I'm gonna go. There's nothing here for me to do.
And his arc is that he's been bringing home the bacon so hard that he just is stressed. He needs to relax and have a cigar on the porch.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way,
and cigars, man.
Did you guys notice in the opening? There's both the vet, who I think has a gun maybe in the beginning, and then also Art comes into his sneaks into his backyard with a rifle
and shoots.
So there's like
crows.
Two different gun wielding.
Oh, I was gonna say,
right at the beginning,
IRL,
I was like,
wouldn't you be way more scared of Mark than anyone else on the block?
Oh yeah, he's called an arms dealer at one point.
He says shit on the news like, and suburbanites. This is like what mass shooters say now. And suburbanites, we're sick of this invasion. We're just not going to take it anymore. We're coming to get them. We're coming to get them. Imagine someone saying that on the news today, and you're like, let's put him in the trio of comedy dudes who are going to bumble through the movie.
That's exactly why he exists. That's what's so interesting to me about this movie. Well, I mean, it's like, at this time... Like, so there's a line, Ray says, I mean, infrared night vision scopes. This is when they're first, like, a group looking at the Klobex. What are we going to do next? Tap their phone line? Mark, oh, that can be arranged. Ray, then all we have to do is, then Ray says, then all we have to do is just burn a cross on their lawn. Like, what's interesting is the worst version, the worst person in this movie isn't the gun-toting crazy nut or the over creative friend or anyone else. It's your main character who installs essentially an idea in everyone else that they're all looking to him to make the choice of, are we going to do it?
The stable one. Art
for some reason.
Is this true? This crazy thing I thought of? You have to validate that it's true.
Yeah, it's super weird. Blatant disregard for women as roles or agency is crazy. Like Back to the Future. Like, that's, how do you get around that problem and not be talked about in the think pieces in 2018?
Right.
How about just write women out mainly?
Right.
Just have one woman and have her off screen most of the time.
The funny thing, though, was that Carrie Fisher had a good amount of screen time to do nothing and have no perspective.
Because like you said, you thought she was going to go to the lake house. And she didn't.
I was like, when is she going to the lake house?
She just hung out.
It keeps happening, and she's still not gone.
Having Tom Hanks run stuff by her, and she'd go, all right, I heard that.
I don't know if that's a good idea.
I don't think it's... And he's like, well, I'm going to do what I want to do. And she's like, I bet you will. And we'd see that happen. Yeah.
You want to hear another crazy, weird, like, there was a lot of negotiations at the beginning of this movie as to whether or not Tom Hanks would have a kid. Because it was written in, and he didn't like it.
Oh, interesting.
Because
Why is that?
His agents and representation and studio was arguing that in his spot in his career at this point, taking daddy roles was like a bad thing.
He's too young
yeah.
to be having a kid.
Yeah.
Not in real life, but like how he's perceived as an actor right now.
Right.
Which I think is real interesting because like we still kind of have the same problem. We try to appear a little bit more woke with our approach to things now. But I'd also still laugh if I saw in a James Bond movie that he had a kid. You know, like that would be a weird instance.
But just because he's James Bond, and like when is he gonna like?
Oh, I absolutely want it.
He must have a kid. I always see him on the streets of
He has
Milan.
80 kids.
And a woman comes up to him and goes, "Remember me? This is your son."
I mean, Kratos
And we
has a
have-
kid.
We have a reverse rooftop chase where the mother with the son in her arms is chasing James Bond as he runs away from his responsibilities.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Indiana Jones 4 is.
Well, he's vining. He's swinging
yeah,
away
I
on
know,
vines.
I
That's
know.
different.
By the way, did you notice that the kid is? I mean, this is another reason they should have gone away. The kid's gone from the movie after this first 10 minutes.
Yeah,
he's
he's
here for a
gone.
moment,
Maybe-
and then like
yeah.
wouldn't you
He
think
shows up in a
that
car later.
That at some point they would have like had him, you know, the kid would come with his dad. I don't know, something.
Well,
there was
that's
no
why
story, but they
it's-
also weren't
yeah.
out of town. So I was like, I guess that's just
It's interesting.
not
He
what
was
this
saying
movie
that
is
they
about.
argued about whether there should be a kid back and forth because it is purely ornamental. He could have been there.
He's
or
in
not.
one.
Doesn't matter.
He's in two scenes basically. He's in
Yeah.
one at the beginning and one at the end to remind you that he was in the beginning.
I think it's it's because I think Dante thought it would be really weird and the writer thought it would be really weird if you were talking about suburbanites and it wasn't about the classical
family unit.
Yeah,
And Art doesn't have a kid, and Mark doesn't have a kid.
This is
so.
precisely what the 80s and 90s with like Spielberg was taking advantage of. I mean, the most interesting aspect of this culture is that it seems to know no bounds in what it will invade. I mean, Spielberg didn't make this movie. He worked with Dante. They're taking advantage of the same WASP, Anglo-Saxon Protestant audience coming from the suburbs to watch movies. That's what made the blockbuster. Yet Spielberg is Jewish. He just used this group and at this time, this type of movie that they were ingesting all the time. They were like, this is what the State of the Union of whiteness is. And everyone bought into it, and that was the 80s and 90s.
There's something I wanted to mention about what we were talking about with the tone of it earlier. That there is that like the femur bone, like zoom in and out, waka 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 waka,
Waka waka waka.
But that stuff, I like tone shifts in a lot of things.
I've seen
but
most of your work.
Yes, so you know what I like.
Yeah.
But
I was
in
like, where are you
this,
coming up, Dr. Cone? Dr. Cone will throw a pump zoom at you faster than anyone.
that's for sure.
Stop. Pump zoom.
But it was so. But the rest of the movie was so not like that, and was so designed. And
Yes.
then in those movies, in those moments when they like broke the conventions, I felt like they were also breaking the acting style conventions, and
Yep.
suddenly they were like improvising it in a way
Hamming it
that
up.
didn't
Yeah.
feel grounded in the reality
No,
they
no,
created.
Tom Hanks does
in a way
cartoon
that I
guys
didn't think
sometimes.
was successful either. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, you pulled the rug out of the out from under the emotional core of this movie because I now can see the actors like trying to have fun in a moment. And
A
I'm like,
great example of
can't
that is
get on
when
board anymore.
is when they're coming over to see if Ray can come out. And
To play.
Carrie Fisher is like, no, until he's grown up, kind of thing. And they literally act like they're alpha. You know, like they put their hands in their
Yeah.
pockets and they like
The joke
kick a
is,
rock that doesn't exist.
Look,
and they're
they're
like, "Aw."
doing the "Can he come out and play" routine,
Yeah.
and she's the mom.
Right.
Speaking
You know
of,
how your wife is your mom.
speaking
Exactly.
of literally the Leave It to Beaver house.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it is.
And on that lot, which I've been on, most of that cul-de-sac is still intact
I
to
know,
this
it's-
day.
it's weird.
It's very strange.
When I
it's in
saw
a
it, I was
lot
like,
of
oh,
movies.
I've seen this lot in
It's
person.
A lot of movies, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, the houses have totally changed, but like that curve, it's crazy how many movies it's in. I think it's in Edward Scissorhands as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so demystify the movies for you youngins.
I'm gonna throw out all the lines I wrote down.
Oh, yeah. I
'Cause that
wrote a couple.
sometimes-
I wrote a couple too.
Yeah.
Want to
let's
get
do-
to
let's
before
do-
we get to
let's-
the end. Yeah.
Keep jumping around.
Especially uniquely, like Joe Dante writes in such an 80s way.
Well, he didn't write it.
He didn't write it. The guy who, I forget his name.
Yeah.
Dana something with an S. He wrote Memoirs of an Invisible Man and notably George of the Jungle.
Then maybe
just
this
because
is- Oh, really?
anytime Brendan Fraser is in this podcast, I make a mention of it. So.
Maybe
Dana Olson.
maybe
Dana
comedy
Olson.
dialogue just had a unique tang in the 80s, but
Oh yeah,
to me,
Inspector
unique
Gadget.
Dang.
To me, these are such 80s lines. Apparently, old Skip made one too many lemon phosphates and El Snappo.
Oh, I wrote down El Snappo too.
Describing someone going crazy. Also, listen to your wife. Who listens to his wife? You gotta listen to me. They're Satanists, the incubus, the succubus.
He's just
I like the
listing
way
things
he
he
says
does.
the
yeah.
incubus, the
The
succubus.
incubus.
But
He's like,
also folded in
learn
there,
those words
it's
today.
explicitly, do not listen to your wife.
Yeah. Nobody knocks off an old man in my neighborhood and gets away with it.
Very
I love
80s
that.
also.
Someone called someone something like, "Hey, meatball."
Yeah.
At some point,
Pinocchio.
which just-
Oh yeah.
That
There's
meatball
another
happens
one
too.
yeah.
He says, if that little dog craps on my lawn again, I'll staple his butt shut.
Yeah.
For some reason, I'm like, that's such an 80s comedy line.
I recently rewatched Nightmare on Elm Street for the first time. Or not for the first time. What? I've watched it so many times. Ignore that I said that.
Okay.
But I watched it again recently, and I forgot about this line. Hey, up yours with a rusty lawnmower.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And there was a lot of a lot of like little moments like that in this where you're like, huh, I don't remember saying those things.
Yeah.
But
never
maybe I did.
I did not call my
'cause-
friends dill holes. I
Yeah.
don't remember doing that.
Although I was quoting Beavis and Butthead a lot,
Right,
so who
right.
knows what I was
Who
doing?
knows what I was
you know?
up to?
Cornholio's weirder than dill hole, yeah.
Oh yeah, cornhole.
Last sequence of lines I wrote down just because I think it's so funny. And I'm sure Joe Dante meant this as his embedded, like, fighting back to get his satire back. But it's literally, so it's, I'll go call the police. And Hank says, no, wait until we find some evidence. And he goes, but that'll take all night. So literally direct appeal to,
Right.
let's not have due process. Let's
Right.
just go in and kill these
Like
people
children
like
do.
a mob.
Yeah, it's like Little Rascals.
Yeah.
There is a Sandlot quality to
Absolutely.
the Burbs. It's an
Absolutely.
adult Sandlot.
Art has a heroin line at the very end when he's talking to the news, getting interviewed as like we
Right.
zoom out. By the way, this is the first instance. I'm just jumping ahead because the last shot mimics the first shot
Yeah.
in the movie.
Yeah.
This is the first time that they ever did anything in a movie with a logo.
In what way?
So it zooms into the globe.
Oh,
Off of
Yeah.
the
right, of the Universal
yeah,
globe.
The
and
Universal
then
logo,
zooms
yeah.
all the way into a suburb, and a lot
That
of
was
people.
good. I liked it.
A lot of people said that was the best part of the movie because they had never seen
It kinda
any.
was.
Yeah. I was on
had
board with this
never-
movie for like 20 minutes.
Right.
I was
And
very on board. I
that
was like,
first shot
ooh,
was part
zoom
of it.
in, suburbia,
I
where
wrote down,
like
and I
all
was
in this
like-
world, and there's a creepy house, and
Yeah.
that seems like that's gonna get really
It's
exciting.
got this
also-
at some point.
Elfman-esque.
When you see the suburbs from above,
Gold
it very
smoke.
pointedly looks like a bland maze.
Right.
And I was like, so there is going to be satire in here, you know? So yeah, that
That's
opening
good
shot is
satire.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the first time in a feature-length movie that anyone ever fucked with production splash.
Yeah.
But anyway, before that undoes itself and we hit the end of the movie, the last line I think in the movie is Art, who's the not fat one.
Right.
The not fat, dumb fat
He's the
guy.
nosy neighbor,
Yeah.
always in
He's the best friend.
Kind of
people's
guy that
business.
comes over for breakfast,
And steals
know.
all your food.
opens your fridge,
Turkey
and
leg.
takes a side of ribs and a full pineapple.
Right.
And
A full
leaves.
pineapple.
Right, they haven't even cut into that pineapple yet. He
Right.
just took it.
It's like it seems that their fridge is like hook rules, just like whatever you imagine. Is
Well,
in his
as we know,
fridge.
Carrie Fisher has no perspective on anything in this movie.
Yeah,
she's just like, well, whatever.
gotta buy
Why
a
not?
pineapple.
Why not?
That's her character.
I'll run
Says-
back to the market and get another pineapple.
I love her
We have
too.
17 pineapples, Carol. All right. Art says, I think the message to psychos, fanatics, murderers, nutcases all over the world is do not mess with suburbanites. Because, frankly, we're not going to take it anymore, you know? We're not going to be content to look over our lawns and wax our cars, paint our houses. We're gonna get them, Don. We're gonna go out and get them.
So
Yeah, it's kind of dark.
Hey,
Ultimately.
White suburbanite dads, let's all get together and fucking kick some random asses.
Well, yeah, it kind of portends some like dark,
dark turn.
he's like the lovable, neighbor who like is paranoid, but also is the
Overactive.
one going to the border and like kicking over water bottles for migrants.
Maybe because
He's
he
like-
happened to be right. This one time with the
dark.
Klopex, he was right.
Yeah.
Some foreigners he thought were evil.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's like a Minuteman at the border for the rest of his life.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's like, no, but it happened. This
It doesn't
one
take
time.
much extrapolation to be like, oh, this guy's like seriously nativist. Like,
Oh yeah, no, he's
You
he's described as like a creative and also as a little bit fashy.
right.
Yeah, that's art for you.
Well, I wanted to cede to you that the film might be seminal in certain ways because I did find myself comparing it to other comedies that I do enjoy a lot more. Like there were moments where the Klopex felt functionally very much like the McPoyles in Always Sunny. And I love me the McPoyles.
Yeah, sardines and pretzels, just
Right.
like random nonsense.
Random humor where it's like they're not from here, so they eat weird gelatinous
Their
cold things.
dog
Yeah.
is enormous.
Yeah. And I also found myself thinking of King of the Hill a lot, even more so than usual, because I'm usually thinking about King of the Hill a lot. But King of the Hill fanatics will know what I'm talking about if you've seen the Burbs. Ray is Hank. Mark is Dale Gribble, clearly. Art is Bill Dauterive, and Corey Feldman is Boomhauer. And I'm not going to unpack why, because you need to have seen both.
Right.
But I do think that lends some credibility
Absolutely.
to the idea that it's part of the comedy conversation. It's part of the history of comedy.
Right.
And it probably inspired some people who were young then and saw it then to think of better iterations of these jokes and put them in their comedies later.
Sure.
I ultimately liked the filmmaking overall. The actual
too.
filmmaking
Yeah.
of it overall was, I like his directing style in that he has a vision and he enacts it, and it's very deliberate. And I thought Tom Hanks was great. I thought Carrie Fisher was great. I just wish she had something to do. And overall, there's a great mood to it and it's fun, and I'm kind of trying to figure out if it feels this way because I'm seeing it now, or like that its legacy has done this to itself. But watching it, for me, for the first time, felt like, where's all the details to this story? This story is like the idea of a story, and they didn't add anything. It felt like a very bare, like, here's a movie about suburbia, and we kind of just did a general first sketch of
Little
this.
smear of suburbia
Everyone
for
kind of
you.
like a vague idea of a character, and we kind of made, because there's no surprises. You think
Yes.
you really think maybe there's going to be some surprises, or it's going to do a left turn at some point. And from the beginning, you're like, no, there's going to be no surprises,
As
no
advertised.
revelations. It's as advertised, and it's like here's skim milk. Have a full glass. I'm like, I don't think I need a full glass of skim milk.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
I'll drink a little. Okay, so it's just going to be this the whole time. Well, you're like
Last
almost to the
swallow,
end of
same
it,
as
and you're
the
like,
first.
it's exactly.
That's
so
my
watery.
argument. That's my argument. That is intentional. It takes all the details. Like, for example, we know
It's a big glass of skim milk.
just a
Room
big
temp.
glass. When you
with what is it? Extra. Oh, it's like the white
Lactose,
bread with the extra
lactate.
glass of water on the side for dipping.
Yeah, Ned Flanders.
Yeah.
when you were mentioning it when Art comes over to Ray's house, and also when Ray takes his dog out to have take a shit,
Right.
and how everyone's dogs are shitting on everyone's lawns. These people are not friends. You take for granted because of the setup of how movies go. You infer that they're friends. They literally are telling their dogs to shit on people's lawns as a passive-aggressive way to get back at each other. They use scare tactics. It's not about the Klopex. They are horrible monsters to each other. They give each other privileged information, and then they totally for example, Art tells Ricky while drinking beers about Ray's smoking scheme. Like, he comes out here so the wife doesn't know that he's smoking, which is not, like, it's not unprivileged information, I guess, but also if that was your friend, would you just advertise that to people? These people are not friends.
I think
These people are just forced to be around each other, which makes everything false and just a big tall glass of milk that you have to drink.
And well, I think it also it could feel that way. Like these characters in this scenario can feel so like tired. And to me, it felt basic. But I wonder if it feels basic to me because of this movie in a certain way.
I think that's
like
part
its
of
legacy has created a world where me in 2018 watches this and thinks this is like the most tired concept ever, and not the most exciting version of it. But that might be because it exists already in the world.
I think it is, at least to some degree. The clearest example to me is the part where it becomes a Western because I forget, there's some sort of showdown in the cul-de-sac about dog shit or whatever. And it does the spaghetti Western zoom close up into the eyes on everyone who's involved in the scene. And then the dog at the end. And I did think very clearly, if that joke had not been done many times since then, I would have laughed at it. But I'm not going to now.
I mean, it's Arrested Development.
It's
what's the puppet's name in Arrested Development?
Franklin.
But
Mr. F. But it makes sense that there's no way to objectively judge comedy which is based in surprise. If it was such a successful comedy that most of the bits have been used again in other comedies you saw, that is always tough.
But not well reviewed movie though.
It became
at
a
the
cult
time.
hit.
Yeah. I also want to ask, because this is just like a reference blank spot. Every time they show Mark in the first act, it plays a particular war sting, which is the same sting they use in the season 1, episode 5 Simpsons episode, Bart the General. Maybe this can't be answered by the men at this table, but is that from something? Is that like from Platoon?
Are you talking about when there's all this marching music in the movie? That comes in a few times. Yeah, it's like
there's
this
also
like
a horn
gearing up
sting.
to.
There's a horn sting that's specifically related to his entrance.
Yeah, it definitely smacks of something of like, John Ford, They Were Expendable or something.
Yeah, I wasn't
like
sure.
that. I don't know what it is.
I wasn't sure specifically what the reference was,
but
I remember those
Yeah.
parts.
It's probably like Patton or something.
It's got to be, because it's identical to the one they use in The Simpsons.
Right.
And if it's used in The Simpsons, it's a reference to something. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. That's all I got, though. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, we can. So what do you guys think? I just wanted to feel out, though. What do you guys think about my theory that it's more about amongst the friends circle than it is actually about the Klopex?
I totally could believe that Joe Dante meant that, but I don't see that at all.
You don't see it
because they
at
don't.
All?
None of them suffer. By
Wait, you see it, but you don't. I'm sorry, I don't.
No,
understand.
I see how, or I believe you that maybe you said you read interviews with him and stuff that was his intent. But however it got ruined, if it was through the production process or whatever, none of the three main trio do anything bad to any of the other three that sticks, and no of the main three suffer any consequences by the end of the film.
Yes,
so I don't know how to parse it that way.
I agree. I mean, the thing that was weird to me is that I thought I was watching a certain movie, and the movie kept changing. I was like, oh, this is what this movie is? Because to me, it was about the three guys. I just didn't know why it was about the three guys, because I wasn't interested in that story.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it ended up being about Tom Hanks and his two crazy neighbors, going in. I would have understood that, frankly, going back to this, if Carrie Fisher was out of town, and this was about what happens when this man who's kind of a man-child, and he gets, but.
Because our wife is also out of town, that could have worked.
It's more like all work and no play.
My better half was gone, and I don't know, and I'm not functional on my own. But yeah, it did ultimately. It was about those three to me, and they all. But it was weird because it ultimately, like we talked about, it should be about three guys who paranoia gets the best of them.
And they destroy each
They
other.
destroy each other and they destroy
Yeah.
someone else innocent.
Yeah.
But the person isn't innocent, so then you're like, well, they weren't paranoid. They were actually
Correct.
right. The clues they got were apt and they were fine, and good job, guys. And so then you're like, huh, all right.
But I see the clues that
moving
you
on.
see. I think it's a compromised satire in
Yeah.
that sense. Yeah.
Do you want
Did make me think
to?
of the last aspect, but we're over time anyway.
I got some trivia if you want to hear it.
Yeah, I can see that you do. Go ahead.
At this, just to this is the kind of
now-
my favorite.
This may be our longest frame rate episode.
Is
It's
it?
about the Burbs
What
that
time is
bothers
it?
me.
No way.
Oh, no, it's not that
way.
long.
Did anyone else think that it might have ended with a total someone from left field that you never met turning out to be the serial killer because they were isolated from the community?
You know what? I didn't
That
even.
might
They
happen.
didn't even plant any inkling of it could.
Be
They
anyone
kind of
else.
actually didn't even plant an inkling of we need to find that serial killer.
Right.
It was just like there used to be someone living in this house and something pretty bad. Anyway, let's find out what's going on with these creepy guys. Oh my God, it's the same thing. That's cool.
But you
That's
could have
convenient
won
for
back
us.
some of your satire cred if there was someone else who's like, I was just so lonely. No one ever sends their dog to shit on my lawn, so I
Right.
started killing people.
Yeah, they definitely could have done that. I
And
would
like-
I would have been like, oh, a surprise if
Or
they did that.
intentionally
it
allowing
was Corey
the neighborhood
Feldman's
to blame
dad.
the creepy people. Yeah. Does Feldman's alive, right?
Yeah, he was doing that
Yeah, he's
music.
alive.
music
Yeah, he's a
Oh,
music
okay.
video.
Oh, he's a
recently
musician.
that has been the
Well, that's what
widespread
we'll cover next week.
recipient of criticism of online bullying.
So, Daniel,
Yes.
thoughts on
Thank-
Corey Feldman accused? No, where can people find you online?
Oh, okay. There's that too. Just email me at danielvincentgord@coreyfeldman.com. My name is Daniel Vincent Gordh. You guys, you see me on the internet. Go to my YouTube channel. That's what I've been working on recently.
Right.
Matt and Dan. And we're lucky enough to be youtube.com/Matt and Dan. You spell it out.
Great
If you
stuff, by
haven't
the
seen
way.
season
Thank you
one,
very much.
Like really smart,
Yeah.
really smart, well written, well crafted.
Thank you very
Just-
much.
and hilarious
Appreciate
web
that.
series. Season 1 out now. Season 2 coming.
Yeah, we just funded season 2, so get
Congratulations.
ready.
Matt and Dan,
The Burbs.
you know where we are. We're
The
here.
Burbs.
The Burbs.
That was the Burbs.
Matt Burbs, Dan Burbs.